What's going on, guys? It's Everett here, and we are going to go over a whole lot of wrist stuff in this video. So obviously people are just texting and typing too much. That's a problem. And we were meant to use our wrists in a whole lot of just random directions consistently, nonstop throughout the day. So a lot of wrist issues popping up. We're going to cover one stretch, and as always, we'll cover the technique in the stretch. Just being in a stretch position doesn't equal better wrist. You have to be very intentful. And here's the big thing, you might not actually need to do a whole lot of stretching or soft tissue work. You might actually have a joint problem. So we'll cover controlled articular rotations, CARs from the FRS system for the wrists. But before we get into that, just so you know what's going on with your wrists, you can identify what maybe some of the issues are. We'll cover some anatomy. So your wrist, you have two forearm bones. You have the radius and the ulna. The radius is more on the side of the thumb. The ulna is more on the side of the pinky. And you have carpal bones. They're really tiny bones. They kind of slide like this. They're synovial joints, meaning there's a synovial membrane and it secretes synovial fluid for lubrication. So better movement with lubrication. That lubrication also feeds the joint itself, because there's not really any blood flow in the joint to feed it nutrients. And then it pulls out metabolic waste of that process. So it gets junk and inflammation out. So when you don't move, you don't get all three of those things. So that's why just sitting and typing with your fingers all day and not moving is pretty bad for your joint health. Now, three of those bones, the scaphoid, the lunate, and the triquetrum, they actually articulate, meaning move on the radius. All right, so that's the major joint. You can go into extension, which is showing someone your palm, flexion, showing yourself your palm. And then you can go into adduction, adduction, and you don't get that much adduction at this joint. It's slightly pointing your fingers away from the body. And then abduction, you do get quite a bit of movement, kind of pointing your fingers towards your other hand. All right. Now, obviously, it's just not a perfect flexion and extension movement. There's little variations, and you can make a full rotating circle. I covered that in my knee video. Your knee doesn't just bend and straighten into flexion and extension. It rotates as well. So just stretching in one position doesn't get all of that potential movement. Okay. So controlled articular rotations at this joint, what we're going to do is we're going to have our elbows pinned to our side and flat palms. So with controlled articular rotations, CARs, we're always focusing on where are we cheating or compensating, and we're just trying to isolate this joint. So nice flat palms, almost like you're trying to initially hold something like a cup of coffee in your palms. And we're going to, without moving the forearm at all, we're going to face the fingers towards one another. All right, so I already covered that. That's abduction. And then we'll do a quarter circle into extension, trying to pull the fingertips down and facing the palms forward. And we're using our muscles here. This isn't a relaxed thing, all right? And then we're gonna do another quarter circle up into adduction. Again, it's a small amount of adduction, but we're essentially where we started, just with fingertips out. And then another quarter circle up into flexion, and then another quarter circle into hardcore abduction, and that's a full rotation. And then we can go back, all right? So we're trying to carve out as large of a circle as we can without cupping the palms like this or moving the elbows at all or hands out to the side. You can also do this with fists. I think doing it with flat hands is a really good indicator of what your actual wrist rotation is. And again, we're trying to go a little bit bigger every single rotation. So I would do 2 to 3 reps in each direction every single day. I've had clients that have gotten a lot of soft tissue work done, massages, because they've got wrist pain, and I show them wrist CARs, and they literally get a click or a pop in the wrist, and then all of a sudden all their wrist pain goes away. All right, because again, this is a joint issue. And I'll get into how to identify whether or not it's more of a joint issue opposed to a soft tissue, muscle, or fascia issue. So say you're doing a standard forearm stretch just like this, you should feel that stretch right here because all these muscles are getting stretched out. However, if you feel it right here, these muscles should be slacked. right? Because they're becoming shorter. So if you feel it here, we call that a closing angle joint problem, a pinch point, and that means that the joints aren't moving well, all right? So you're not gonna fix that joint problem by stretching this side. In fact, you could be causing more pain here. So what you can do is you can go to a chiropractor and get that joint moved, or again, sometimes just doing wrist cars on your own, really intentful, good control, building up more and more contraction. That'll actually help out with that joint problem as well. So now hopping into the wrist stretch. Lots of ways to do this wrist stretch. I'm going to show you one primary way and then a variation depending on your shoulder capacity. And it's in a half combat position like this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just point my fingertips back behind the body and boom, stretch like that. Now, I wish it was that easy for most people. We always talk about compensations in these videos because they're very important. And what most people do is, say you're doing your wrist cars, all right, and you couldn't actively go into that much wrist extension. You stopped there. Well, how are you possibly forcing your hand back that far? Well, most people will just be hiking a shoulder. Let me rearrange my body here. They'll be rotating at the elbow to do something weird. And maybe in the palm, they'll have a really strange palm position with a lot of pressure on the pinky side of the palm opposed to the thumb side. So you want to watch out for compensation. So here's how we load up for this. We're going to load up in a position that there isn't much stretch. So I'm going to lean way forward and get my fingertips spread and make sure I have even pressure in my palm. From here, I'm going to rotate so the inside of my elbow is facing forward, and I'm going to get my shoulder back and down. So I don't want that hiked up like this. I want back and down. Now, holding that position, I'm then going to lean up the body, making sure I don't move anywhere else until I get a good wrist stretch. So this can be pretty intense. I would do maybe 30 seconds per side, and you could go back and forth. Ideally, you want to work up to 2 minutes here. And again, if you really crank into this stretch, you might not feel anything for 15, 20 seconds, and then it will become way too extreme. So move up, and about 30 seconds in, if you don't really feel a whole lot of stretching, then push back a little bit more. But don't go to where you can't go anymore. Initially, that's going to get really bad, all right? And again, you can go back and forth, or you can try to hold for 2 minutes per side, all right? Now, because I have a lot of rotation going on in the shoulder here, some people, they try to get in this position, and what will happen is their fingertips will start to rotate so they're not facing behind the body. And obviously, we're not gonna get a good wrist stretch. So for clients that have that issue, what I do is I set them up with the wrist forward. Now you need to watch out because this shoulder is going to be really hiked forward in this position. So you still want to be pretty back and neutral. And once again, you'll have to start out forward, get the shoulder back, check the elbow, and then lean back like this. So for my clients who have one arm or maybe both arms that really just has to rotate out like that, what I do is I get them squared away in this good position, and then we rotate the body very gently like that. And so you're going to get a shoulder stretch from doing this as well. But now the fingertips are facing back. But they didn't have the initial capacity to even do that without hiking the shoulder. So we got them in an easy position for them, and then we rotated the body. But again, go really easy. Don't just crank the body, 90 degrees. That could cause some problems on the shoulder and the wrist. So back it up, a couple degrees at a time. Wait for that stretch to set in, and then, do 30 seconds. Feels all right, take it to a minute. So that's how we do full rotation of the wrist to take care of joints and get those moving. Again, if you text and type a lot, you got to make up for that lack of movement. So you might have to do cars, morning, lunchtime, and evening, a couple reps each direction to really try to make up for that lack of not movement. And so again, be very intentful with how you're stretching your wrists and just make sure you're not moving other parts of your body around your lack of range of motion. That's not going to improve, say, that wrist extension that we're working on in that stretch specifically. So if you liked the video, leave me a comment, like, please subscribe. And if you want to further support the channel, I've got a full course on my website that goes over a lot of this type of stuff, but for your hips. It's 2.5 hours long, 16 videos, all right? So once again, thanks for watching. Use this consistently. Now that you have the information, most people don't get any results because they're just not consistent with it. So again, do this daily for 7 days minimum. See how you feel, make your adjustments. You'll get better and better at the cars and the stretching after that 7-day period, I promise you. And then your results will really take off. So thanks, and see you in the next video.